Throughout this week, and really throughout the past year, Democrats have, as we've been talking about, have utterly been milking the January 6th riot for all that they can. And they've been trying to convince the American public that it was an insurrection when it was really a riot. In remarks today, as I made reference to earlier, Vice President Kamala Harris equated January 6th, where 5 lives were lost, to the attack on Pearl Harbor, where 2,403 Americans died, and to 9/11, where 2,977 Americans were killed. And the legacy media, which should know the definition of an insurrection, is parroting the same narrative and giving a platform to those whose claims tie into it and bolster such claims, such as 3 retired Army generals who recently said that there could be a coup attempt or perhaps even a civil war following the 2024 election unless the military engage in greater indoctrination of their own troops. Well, with me now to respond to that claim and others being pushed by the left is FRC's Executive Vice President, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, retired from the United States Army after 36 and a half years. He was one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force. He also spent the last 4 years of his 36 and a half years as Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. General, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony. Glad to be here.
All right. Before we get into the claim by these retired generals, share, I know we've talked about this before, but we're 1 year removed from it. Give us your thoughts on the events of January the 6th.
Well, it was heartbreaking for me, Tony, with 36 and a half years in the Army and to see what I, at that moment, felt like was our nation falling apart, our nation just coming apart at the seams. That was a day, as far as I'm concerned, that is etched in my mind as one of the saddest days in my life. And look, I know that there were people that went there that day not intending to do what they did, but those that went in that Capitol that day were dead wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, they've given up their right to call themselves American patriots.
I agree. You and I have talked about that. I think, first off, if you're going to lead an insurrection, that was the stupidest insurrection I've ever seen.
That was not an insurrection, as you've already said. That was nowhere near an insurrection. Right. I've seen insurrections.
Right. I mean, I don't have as much experience as you did, but I worked in anti-terrorism. I worked as a police officer. I served in the military. I mean, I understand that a little more planning goes into trying to overthrow a government entity. This was a mob that engaged in a riot, criminal activity, but it's being exploited. And I want to play a clip from the president this morning in his speech, just to underscore how this is being exploited to advance their agenda. Play clip number 4, please.
Make no mistake about it. We're living at an inflection point in history, both at home and abroad. We're engaged anew in a struggle between democracy and autocracy, between the aspirations of the many and the greed of the few, between the people's right of self-determination and self-seeking autocrat.
I'm shocked that he would even say that, given that he's the one who just tomorrow will have to defend his mandates before the Supreme Court, talking about autocrats. But is this a cover for the left to advance their own agenda to try and grab power and whittle away at the very foundation of our freedoms?
Yeah, ever since 9/11 occurred, ever since the 6th of January occurred last year, we've all been victims of a big psychological operation, of a big con. The National Guard was left on the streets there for an extended period of time, and they didn't even have weapons. There was nothing for them to do. They were just standing on the street corners. But when the media came by, the media took notice of them and reported that we were still guarding the Capitol. We had barbed wire around the Capitol. For what reason? For what? Why? It was all part of a big con game. And this, what we're seeing today, and what the president was just doing, was participating in this big psychological operation that is designed to convince Americans that people like you and me and other conservatives, especially conservative Christian groups, are an internal threat to this nation. And that is their objective, is to make us the pariahs in a nation that is desperately looking for leadership.
I want to play one more clip of the president. Then I want to move on to the Department of Defense and whether or not there are those that are using January 6th, as they are, to try to take over elections federally, to also conduct a purge of the military. I want to play another clip of the president, which really stuck out to me. It's kind of the end of his speech this morning he made. But when I read it, well, I'm going to play it first, then we'll talk about clip number 5.
Deep in the heart of America burns a flame lit almost 250 years ago of liberty, freedom, and equality.
You know, that sounds more like the call of the French Revolution, not that of the American Revolution. Fraternity, equality, and liberty. That was the call of the French Revolution.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And listen, I think that this is exactly what people think that it is. It is an effort to turn this country into something that is not what was created by our founding fathers, and that is a liberal, Marxist, socialist society here in America. That's what this administration is about. That's what the leadership in this administration is all about, and that's what we see happening here. Just open your eyes and look at what's happening in this country, and you will see the beginnings of a Marxist society here.
All right, General, I'm going to turn now specifically to the military. Right before Christmas, there was an announcement about an updated policy to prohibit extremist activities by military personnel. This is Press Secretary John Kirby on December the 20th. Let's play clip number 10, please.
Secretary Austin has emphasized the department is focused on prohibited activity, not on a particular ideology, thought, or political orientation. The department has always maintained a distinction between thoughts and actions.
Are you concerned about what's happening with our military and this focus on what they call extremism?
I absolutely am. First of all, nobody can define extremism. And what's going to happen, Tony, is because this is so ill-defined and because there's so many nebulous things associated with this, what they call this program to root out extremism, what you're going to see is they're going to start adding to it. And even though they say that they're not after ideology, they're not after people's ideas or people's faith or people's leanings politically, that's not true. That's just simply not true. And what's going to happen is they're going to start adding groups like ours, groups like the Family Research Council as being an extremist group, which you cannot be associated with because we stand on biblical marriage. And if you look at all of the SOGI stuff that's associated with this administration and with what this administration has done in terms of domestic policy, what you're going to see is you're going to see that very same thing integrated into this. And anyone who is associated with an organization like us or the American Family Association or any of the Christian conservative groups, they are going to be we're going to be put on a hit list. We're going to be put on a list that will be declared to be one of the extremist groups. And anybody associated with us is going to wind up being disciplined in one way or another because of their association with us. We've already seen that. We've already seen that under Barack Obama. And you remember it very well when the American Family Association was identified in this diversity training that was taking place by this organization called DOMI. And they listed the American Family Association as an extremist group. And they were told, if you're associated with them in any way, you're subjecting yourselves to a court-martial and being put out of the military. That is going to happen again. We've already seen it.
Yeah, you preempted me there because I was going to say what you are laying out there is not hypothetical. It's actually occurred. It's history. We saw it under the Obama administration, but it's progressed. So, I mean, you have very clearly, you have organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center working with the Biden administration's Pentagon to draw up these policies. And we know that they're an anti-Christian organization. It's not going to stop with organizations like American Family Association, Family Research Council, or Alliance Defending Freedom. This is going to progress, and we've already seen evidence of this as well, that it's going to go towards certain religious denominations that hold forth a biblical interpretation of human sexuality and of marriage. Those chaplains are either going to be silenced, they're going to have to silence themselves, or they'll be silenced by the military. These teachings, which they call extreme, are biblical teachings.
No, that's exactly right, Tony. And what this is doing, though, is if you look at our military today, I'm more concerned about our military today than I've ever been. You and I have talked about this. And if you look at the recruiting videos and the ads that are being placed for recruiting for our military today, and then you look at the people that are being put out of the military because they're standing on their constitutional rights not to be vaccinated, we are upside down. We're recruiting the wrong people and we are putting out the right people. We're upside down in the military today, and this is going to destroy our military if somebody doesn't step in and turn this around. And I hope that will be the Congress in 2022 when they retake the House and the Senate.
So, General, let me ask you a very pointed question. Do you think this is intentional, that there is an effort to purge those that hold to conservative traditional viewpoints?
I think it is, Tony. And, first of all, there are lots of theories about why, this is being done intentionally, one of which is, and it's valid, I think, is that if you have a weakened military, you're far less likely to use it in the future. And there is an anti-military wing of the Democratic Party, particularly those that are like the Squad and those that are the most progressive and most, I'd say, radical. They don't want a strong military because the United States has a history of using that military normally and most often, historically at least, when our allies or our own nation needs that military, and it's the only real solution. But it's hard to understand how anybody could want to live in an America that is more vulnerable every day because they're destroying our military.
So if you can't eliminate it, then you simply hollow it out and make it a shell. As you said, that is not going to be a threat to anyone other than the fact that when we need it, and history has shown us, in fact, the vice president today making reference to Pearl Harbor as if January 6th had anything to do with Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor showed us that we were not prepared, and we had to ramp up to engage in what became a world war.
Yeah, no question about it, Tony. Listen, it goes back to, and everybody knows this, but it goes back to, when our Constitution was written, and one of the founding fathers, one of the most famous of our founding fathers, stepped out into the streets of Philadelphia, and a woman asked him, "What kind of government have you given us?" And he said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." He knew that as long as we were a nation, because we were a big experiment, because we were unique, he even said, we have searched all forms of government and found none suitable for this new nation. Benjamin Franklin. And that, when he said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it," that was prescient in many ways, because he knew that as long as we were a nation, that we would have to be able to defend this nation in this way of life that it was given to us by that Constitution that was written.
Yeah, that's why I always say that a republic requires us to be participants, not spectators. We can't stand on the sidelines and watch. We've got to be engaged, even more so when things are not going the direction we like and we see the threats that are against our republic and our freedoms. All the more reason we've got to be informed and engaged, but hopeful, always anchored in the truth, and that our hope springs eternal. It doesn't come around every 4 years. Our hope is every morning as we see the glories and the goodness of the Lord. General, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much. We will be exploring this more as we get the details of this new policy as it unfolds.
Thanks, Tony.